I used to believe that love true, all-consuming love was unbreakable. That once two people had weathered enough storms together, nothing could tear them apart. I believed that because of her. Ayla. She was my everything. My anchor during my darkest nights, and the light that made each morning worth waking up to. We had fought for our love against judgment, distance, circumstance, and we'd won. Or so I thought. Our wedding was 3 weeks away when she vanished. No calls, no messages, just silence. I searched, panicked, even called hospitals. Nothing. I thought she might have been hurt, kidnapped, maybe worse. I was ready to tear the world apart looking for her. Then she came back months later, smiling, glowing, and visibly pregnant. I remember standing there, frozen in the cafe where we used to meet. She walked in like she hadn't disappeared without a word. Like she hadn't missed a wedding. Like she hadn't shattered me. And in her arms, she carried what looked like guilt and joy twisted together wrapped in the swell of her belly. When I asked whose it was, she whispered, "His. The man who saved my life." She didn't see it, but I died right then. I left the next morning. Didn't pack everything. Didn't say goodbye. I just vanished, like she once had. No notes. No explanations. I thought if I left without a word, maybe she'd feel a fraction of what I felt. Now, years later, I've returned. Not for revenge. Not even for closure. Just to tell the story. Maybe by the end I'll understand how the woman who promised forever traded our future for a debt of gratitude. Maybe I'll forgive her. Or maybe I'll just learn to live with what's left of me. Either way, this is how it all fell apart. Ayla and I met during our second year of university. She was studying fine arts, always carrying a sketch pad with smudged charcoal fingertips, hair tucked behind one ear, eyes sharp enough to see the soul behind a smile. I was buried in business and economics, numbers, order, plans. She brought chaos into my life, the beautiful kind. She'd drag me out of libraries to watch sunsets or pull me into rainstorms just to dance. And somehow, her spontaneity grounded me more than any financial forecast ever could. We started as friends. Late-night talks, shared playlists, debates about whether love was fate or choice. She believed in fate. I didn't. Not until her. Her bond deepened in that slow, inevitable way. A brush of hands, a shared laugh, stolen glances that lingered too long. When we finally kissed, it felt like the world stopped spinning for a second, just so it could catch its breath and watch us. We were inseparable after that. Her parents weren't thrilled. Mine weren't either. She wasn't the practical choice for a future CEO. And her mother thought I was too cold, too calculated for someone with Ayla's spirit. But we didn't care. We made plans, whispered dreams into pillows, imagined a life somewhere far from judgment and expectations. Then came the accident. Ayla had gone on a solo hiking trip one weekend. She said she needed inspiration for a new project. It should have been a simple climb, but there was a landslide. Her leg was crushed, and she was trapped for nearly 2 days before rescue teams found her. But someone else found her first, a hiker named Ryan, who stumbled across her before the medics did. Ryan carried her down the trail, improvised a stretcher from branches, and stayed awake for 24 hours, keeping her conscious. She told me later, "He saved my life." I was grateful. Of course I was. I even thanked him when we met. But something changed in her after that. During her recovery, she insisted I didn't visit every day, said she needed space. I thought it was the pain meds, the trauma. I tried to understand. I gave her time, patience, and love. But Ryan, he was always around, checking in, bringing her food, telling her stories, holding her hand when she cried. I told myself it was just gratitude, that nothing could shake what Ayla and I had. She moved in with me once she could walk again. We started planning the wedding. She wanted a beach ceremony, barefoot in the sand. I said yes to everything, even the things I hated, just to see her smile again. But I started noticing the distance. She'd stare out the window for hours. flinch when I touched her. One night, I found her crying in the bathroom, clutching her sketch of a faceless man with her eyes. That should have been my warning. That love, even ours, wasn't invincible. That sometimes the heart doesn't choose based on history, but on who caught it when it was falling. It was a Thursday when everything unraveled. Isla had told me she was visiting her mother for the weekend, said they were finalizing some wedding details. I didn't question it. I kissed her goodbye that morning, watched her drive off, and went back to drafting the seating chart like an idiot who still believed he was building a life with her. But that night, I got a call. Not from her. From her mother. "I thought she was with you," she said. Her voice was tense, clipped. "She told me she was staying with you until the bachelorette." I stared at my phone like it had betrayed me. "She left this morning," I replied, confused. "She said she was coming to you." Her mother paused, and in that silence, my chest hollowed. I called Ayla. No answer. Texted. No response. Hours passed. I started pacing, calling her friends, even Riam, though I hated doing it. He didn't pick up either. Panic set in. By morning, I filed a missing person report. Drove to every place she loved. Her favorite bookstore, the old art building on campus, the cliffs where she once sketched for hours. Nothing. For 3 days, she was gone. Completely gone. Then I got the message. It wasn't a phone call. Not even a proper text. Just a photo sent through WhatsApp, no words. Just her, standing outside a small cabin near the northern woods. She was smiling, wrapped in a sweater I'd never seen before, with someone's arm just out of frame. Her hand rested over her stomach, fingers splayed. I knew. I knew even before I zoomed in and saw the faint curve of her belly. That was the moment the foundation cracked. Not because she was pregnant, but because she hadn't told me. Because she left me in the dark for days while carrying a secret that destroyed everything we built. She knew I would have married her, raised that child, even if it wasn't mine if she'd just been honest. But she chose silence. She chose him. I didn't sleep that night. I packed a bag the next morning, took a long look around our apartment, and walked out the door. That was the day I became the ghost in her story. Just as she'd become the stranger in mine. I didn't go far at first. I stayed in a hotel on the outskirts of the city, just watching from a distance. It was stupid, maybe even pathetic, but I wasn't ready to disappear completely, not yet. Part of me was still hoping she'd call, that she'd explain everything, that there was some twisted misunderstanding and I was just overreacting, but she didn't. Instead, I saw her again be chance, or maybe fate. She was walking through a quiet part of town, a hand on her stomach, the other intertwined with his. Ryan. I recognized him instantly, though we'd only met once in the hospital after her rescue. He had that heroic softness that made people trust him. Gentle smile, kind eyes, the kind of man who carried your pain like it was his own. They looked happy. He kissed her temple like it was the most natural thing in the world, and she leaned into it like she'd done it 1,000 times. I left before they saw me. My throat was tight, my chest heavier than it had ever felt. I wasn't angry yet too hollow. Confused. Isla wasn't a liar. She wasn't cruel. So why did she vanish? Why didn't she talk to me first? That night, I opened a bottle of wine we had saved for our wedding celebration. I drank alone, the label peeling under my fingers, and tried to remember when things had changed. Was it after the accident? After he saved her? Was it while I was caring for her, loving her, waiting for her to come back to herself, that she gave her heart to someone else? Over the next few weeks, I made plans to leave permanently. I resigned from my job, canceled our apartment lease, and signed over my half of the wedding deposits to her. I didn't want a refund. I didn't want her to owe me anything, not even the decency of closure. But just before I was about to board the train out of the city, I saw her again. Alone this time. She was sitting at the same cafe where we used to spend lazy Sunday mornings, her sketchpad open in front of her, pencil tapping against her lips. And she looked lost, not glowing, not content, just tired. I don't know what possessed me, but I walked in. sat across from her. She looked up slowly, her face pale, eyes red like she hadn't slept in days. "Eli," she whispered, barely audible. My name on her lips felt like a knife. Still, I didn't speak. She reached out instinctively, her hand hovering just above mine. "I didn't know how to tell you," she said. "I didn't plan for this to happen." "Then why did you let it?" I asked. My voice sounded foreign to me, calm, though with a storm underneath. Her eyes welled up, and for a second, I hated how beautiful she still was when she cried. "He saved me," she said, like that explained everything. "I owe him my life. And you thought giving him a child would pay that debt?" She flinched. "It wasn't like that." "Then tell me what it was like," I demanded. "Tell me why you left me, why you let me plan a future with you when your heart was already somewhere else." She swallowed hard. I was confused. I felt broken after the accident. I didn't know who I was anymore. "You were everything. But Ryan, he made me feel safe, needed. He didn't expect me to be whole." "And I did?" I asked. She hesitated. That silence cut deeper than any answer she could have given. I stood. "You could have told me. You could have spared me all of this." "I was scared," she whispered. "Of losing you. Of hurting you." "You lost me anyway," I said, stepping back. And it hurt worse than the truth ever could have. She didn't follow me as I walked out. Didn't chase me or call my name. And that was when the anger finally set in. Not because she fell for someone else. Not even because she was having his child. But because she didn't trust me with the truth. After everything, she chose silence. She made decisions for both of us, as if I was just some placeholder in her life, waiting patiently while she figured out what she really wanted. I was done waiting. And if she was going to act like I never existed then, maybe I'd do the same. Maybe that would be her punishment. To live in a world where I'd vanished without a word, just like she did. Except I wasn't sure if I was punishing her or myself. It was a month after that final conversation in the cafe when I got the letter. It came in a plain envelope, no return address. Tucked beneath my apartment door, though no one should have known I was still in town. Inside was a single page, handwritten in Isla's looping script, and a photograph, a black and white sonogram. The baby. And beneath it, a single sentence. "I didn't choose him over you, I chose the part of me I lost." I read it again and again. Then I noticed the date on the sonogram. The conception didn't line up with her disappearance. It was after. Weeks after, which meant when she left, she hadn't been pregnant yet. Isla hadn't been carrying his child when she vanished. She made that decision later, not out of desperation, not from an accident. She made it deliberately. I stared at the paper, my heartbeat echoing in my ears. All this time, I'd assumed the betrayal happened behind my back, that she'd chosen him before I ever knew. But she hadn't. She chose him after she left. After she walked away from me. She didn't leave me because she was in love with him. She left me because she didn't know who she was anymore, and in trying to find herself, she created a new version of her life. One I wasn't part of. The betrayal cut deeper than I realized. Because it wasn't about infidelity or lies. It was about her rewriting our story, erasing me entirely from the future she rebuilt. That was the moment something inside me hardened. The ache became sharp. Clean. She didn't replace me. She buried me. And maybe it was time I let her see the grave. After reading the letter and seeing the sonogram, I walked for hours. No destination. Just the sound of my footsteps echoing through empty streets, trying to make sense of everything Ayla had done and everything I had felt. I kept telling myself I'd moved on, that I was over her. But seeing her words, her handwriting again, stirred something in me. Not love, not hope, just the ghosts of both. The timing changed everything. She hadn't left me because she loved Rayanne. She left me because she couldn't face herself. Couldn't face who she had become with me, or maybe who she thought I needed her to be. And then, in that vulnerable space, she chose him. chose a man who reminded her of survival instead of the pain of remembering what she lost. I'd been mourning a version of her that didn't exist anymore. I couldn't stop thinking about that sentence. I didn't choose him over you, I chose the part of me I lost. Did she regret it? Did she ever wake up next to Ryan and remember the nights we spent curled up in my car, eating takeout and dreaming of Paris? Did she look at the walls of their home and think about the place we had picked together, with its creaky stairs and the lilac tree outside the window? Or had she truly buried it all, left me in the ashes of her past? I knew I shouldn't respond to the letter. I should have thrown it away. But I didn't. Instead, I showed up. Ela and Ryan lived in a small, weathered cottage by the forest's edge, far from the city noise. It was quiet, picturesque. The kind of place where someone would go to start over. When I knocked, I didn't expect her to answer. But she did. She opened the door slowly, wearing a faded hoodie and leggings, her hair tied back in a loose braid. She was barefoot. She looked exactly the same, and entirely different. We stared at each other for a long moment. I held the letter out without saying a word. "I didn't think you'd come," she said, her voice trembling. "I didn't think you'd send it." She stepped aside, gesturing me in. I followed her into the living room, where toys sat neatly in a basket by the fireplace. A child's painting hung on the wall, scribbles of green and blue. In the center was a sun with a smiling face. "My son," she said softly, noticing my eyes lingering. "His name is Nico." I said nothing, just nodded. We sat across from each other on the couch like strangers trying to bridge a vast, broken road. She poured tea, her hands shaking slightly, and I watched her every movement like it was a performance I'd seen before but couldn't remember the ending to. "Why now?" I finally asked. "Why send that to me?" She swallowed. "Because I realized I owed you the truth, and because I've never stopped thinking about you." "That doesn't change anything," I said. "I know," she whispered, "but it might change how you carry it." There was silence again. Then she spoke. "After the accident, everything felt different. I felt fragile like glass. And you, Eli, you were still whole, still strong. I didn't know how to be with you anymore without feeling like I was failing you." "You never failed me," I said, my voice sharp. She looked down. "Maybe not in your eyes, but in mine I was just a shadow of who I used to be. Rayan saw me in that darkness and never asked me to be more. He didn't expect the girl I used to be, just the woman I had become." I shook my head slowly. "You didn't even give me the chance to know that version of you." "I know," she said. "That's what I'll always regret." "Do you love him?" She hesitated. "Yes," she said. "But it's different. Then what did you feel for me?" She nodded. "You were my fire. He's calm." "And the child?" Her eyes softened. "He's my light." I felt something collapse in me like a quiet surrender. She had moved on. Built something new. Not better. Not worse. Just different. And while I had been stuck reliving what we were, she had made peace with who she became. "Why didn't you ever come looking for me?" I asked, finally voicing the question that haunted me. "I wanted to," she said. 100 times. But I thought you hated me. And honestly, I didn't feel like I had the right to ask you to come back. Not after the choice I made. And yet, here I am," I murmured. She gave a sad smile. "Yes, here you are." I stood, suddenly overwhelmed. "I should go." She didn't try to stop me. She just stood with me, eyes glassy. "I'm sorry, Eli. For everything. I never meant to hurt you." I nodded. "But you did." "I know." We stood at the door again, just like before. But this time, there was nothing left to say. As I stepped out into the fading evening light, I heard a child's laughter from the back room, pure, joyful, untouched by the chaos of adults. And for a moment, I envied that innocence. Because real, raw love isn't about perfect choices. It's about what you're willing to hold on to when everything else shatters. And I'd finally realized I'd been holding on to a ghost. Now, maybe I could let it go. I should have walked away. I shouldn't have let that be the end left her with her son, her quiet house, and the life she had built without me. But something inside me felt unfinished, like there was still a thread between us pulling taut, begging to be snapped. And it wasn't guilt. It wasn't longing. It was something deeper, something darker. So I came back. One last time. She opened the door, surprised but not startled. Maybe she'd been expecting me. "We said what we needed to say," Isla whispered. "No," I said. "You did. I just listened." Her lips parted slightly, and I stepped inside without waiting. The same sketches hung on the walls. One caught my eye, a faceless man standing in the rain. Still unfinished. "I want to understand," I said. "Not for closure. Not for peace. For truth." "I gave you the truth," she said gently. "No," I said sharply. "You gave me your version of it. You gave me just enough to soften the wound but not the blade itself." She folded her arms, defensive now. "What more do you want?" "I want to know the moment you stop loving me." She froze. The room held its breath. "It wasn't a moment," she said finally. "It was slow, like watching a star fade over time." "Was it Ryan?" I asked. "Was it when he carried you down that mountain?" She closed her eyes. "It started when I couldn't walk, Eli. When I couldn't paint. When I couldn't laugh. And every time you looked at me, I saw the disappointment you never said out loud." My fists clenched. "That's not fair, isn't it?" she shot back. "You were so strong, so determined to fix everything. You wanted the old Isla back, the girl who made you feel alive. But I wasn't her anymore, and I hated myself for not being enough for you." My chest ached. "I never asked you to be anything but you. But you needed a version of me that didn't exist anymore," she said, voice breaking. "And I couldn't live pretending for the rest of my life." I turned away, eyes burning. "So you chose him. I chose survival," she said. "And yes, eventually, I chose love again. Not the way I loved you. Never like that, but enough to breathe." The silence stretched. Then I turned, anger bubbling. "Do you know what you took from me?" I said, voice low. "You let me plan a life with you. You let me stand at the edge of forever alone." Her eyes welled up. "I was terrified, Eli. And I was destroyed," I said. "You didn't just leave. You let me become a stranger in a story we wrote together. You erased me, like I was a mistake you regretted." "I didn't erase you," she whispered. "I buried you because I didn't know how to carry the weight of you anymore." I laughed bitterly. "That's the thing, Ayla. I carried your weight for years, through everything. I would have carried you, broken leg and all, if it meant you stayed." Tears rolled down her cheeks now, silently. "But you never asked me to," I said. "You decided I couldn't handle the version of you that didn't shine. You gave him your pain and called it love. I gave him what I couldn't give you anymore," she whispered. "The version of me that didn't owe anyone anything." There it was, the crack that split everything wide open. She hadn't betrayed me with lies or infidelity. She had betrayed me with silence, with decisions made in dark corners of her heart that I was never allowed to reach. And the worst part? She thought she was protecting me. "I wish you had just said goodbye," I murmured, exhausted now. "I wish you had stood in front of me and told me you didn't love me anymore." "I couldn't," she said. "Because you were afraid to see what it would do to me?" I asked. "No," she replied, "because I was afraid of what it would do to me." And I understood then. She wasn't cruel. She was cowardly. She wasn't a villain. She was human. And somehow, that hurt more. Because we always imagine betrayal with malice, but most of the time, it comes dressed in fear and quiet heartbreak. I stepped back toward the door. This time, she didn't try to stop me. "I'll always love you," she said, trembling. "I'll always remember who you were," I replied. "But I can't love a memory anymore." I walked out, and she let me go. I didn't go back to the city right away. Instead, I traveled quiet places, small towns, oceans with no names to me. I drifted, not running, not chasing, just existing. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to be still. To let the grief rise and fall like tides. No more replaying old conversations. No more holding out hope that she'd call, message, or appear in some cafe doorway again. That version of my life had ended. Somewhere between the memory of her laugh and the echo of my own heartbreak, I found acceptance. Not peace. Peace is a luxury for those who win. But I found something that let me breathe without pain in my chest, that let me look back without flinching. I started writing again. Journaling mostly. Turning fragments of us into prose, not for anyone else to read, but for me, to sort through the tangled wreckage. Each word felt like stitching a wound I'd ignored for too long. And as I wrote, I realized something I hadn't understood before. I had made her the center of everything. My future was built around Ayla. My ambitions bent to fit the mold of our shared dreams. And when she left, I didn't just lose her, I lost the version of myself that only existed because of her. But that version wasn't the whole of me. I buried my own identity beneath the weight of devotion. I'd called it love. Maybe it was. But love shouldn't require self-erasure. That was her mistake too. She gave pieces of herself away to me, then to Rian, trying to find someone who would love the shattered parts without needing her to be whole. And in that process, she forgot how to stand on her own. We both did. Some wounds don't scar clean. They remain raw in certain lights, in specific songs, in the feel of old places. I know I'll always carry a part of her with me, not as a burden, but as a mark. Proof that I love deeply, even if it didn't end the way stories promise. Eventually, I moved to another city. A small coastal town where no one knew my name or my history. I started teaching at a local community college, guiding young minds through literature, helping them find their voices before they lost them in someone else. It was enough. I don't know if Ayla still thinks of me, if she ever sits by the window and imagines what would have happened if she'd stayed, if she still sketches faceless men in the rain. But I do know this: we were not a tragedy. We had a lesson. And in letting go of her, I found the man I had forgotten how to be. Whole. Not because she left, but because I finally let her go. I began this story by saying I used to believe love was unbreakable, that if two people fought hard enough, nothing could tear them apart. I don't believe that anymore. Love is fragile. It bends beneath silence, cracks under fear. It can be lost not in an explosion, but in the quiet erosion of two people drifting away from who they once were. Ayla didn't betray me because she stopped loving me. She betrayed me because she didn't believe I could love who she had become. And maybe that was my fault too, because I loved her so loudly, so thoroughly, that I didn't see her fading in the shadow of my devotion. She made her choice, and I made mine. I walked away not to hurt her, but to save myself. To salvage the remnants of a man who had nearly disappeared beneath promises that were no longer true. I left without a word, not out of vengeance, but because I finally understood that some stories don't need a final chapter to end. Sometimes they end in silence. And now, I'm okay with that. Because in losing her, I found something more honest. I found that love isn't about holding on when everything falls apart. Sometimes, it's about knowing when to let go and walking away with your soul intact. This wasn't a story about betrayal or revenge. It was a story about letting go of a life that no longer fits and the quiet, painful strength it takes to start again. She had her beginning, and I had mine. Not together, but whole at last.